Well, here once again in the Office of Superintendent of Public Schools here, the Shelton School District, Wyeth. Jessee, how are you?
Great, Jeff.
We are moving into the second half of the school year. The countdown is on as we do all that. But at the same time, there's a lot of folks that are looking at what's happening, not only here in the Shelton School District, but across the South Sound, the state, and really even the nation when it comes to federal and state funding of schools, district funding of schools. There's a lot of rumblings out there on what's happening and how things may look differently next year. Can you give us some updates on that before we move into other issues?
Oh, you opened it all up there.
Might as well start off strong.
Wow, that's a big topic. Lots of things. In particular, the things that I can directly comment on is obviously the finances for the Shelton School District, right? And so, this is my fourth year here in the district. Since I've been here, we haven't had a really large cash fund balance. And, if you don't have a lot of money in your savings, it's hard when there's super increases in cost. And so the increase in the general operations of the district, again, I think I made comments before with you, like people don't recognize, when your garbage bill, is, $30 or $25,000 a month. And then when you're paying water and sewers, $900, almost $1 million, like out of an $82 million thing just to operate operationally, and insurance gone up. And it's the same things everybody else is doing, right? Like there's no special deal for the district. It's literally the same providers that you have at home as the same ones we have here. I just ran a calculation using our accounting for this district that we report to the state, because we report all our finances to the state, Jeff, and we are audited every year. And that's the things that I would want the public to know. We take it very seriously about where tax dollars go. And most of those dollars are obviously state dollars that fund us. And so for just our operational costs, over the last 3 years, we've received $4 million less from the state than what did it cost. So the state goes, oh yeah, this is what your utilities will cost, your insurance. That money that we receive directly from the state to us, that's called proportionment. So this is proportionally what it should cost a typical district. In this case, the Shelton School District. In the last 3 years, it's $4 million short. Where does that, again, my thing is, where does that money come from? Like people go, oh, are you managing my money right? As a taxpayer here in Washington State, I can tell you I want the tax dollars to go exactly where they need to do for what you and I think most people listening in is, what's basic ed? What can I expect out of that? Well, if I have to have heat, utility, water, and sewer, and to maintain the structure, we have to provide transportation. We need food. We obviously need teachers. Those are all things that cost us. We just aren't getting the same amount of monies. And so why I'm so focused on operational costs is because that's what I think most people listening in can understand. Like, yeah, I've seen that in my own bills at home. I can understand why the district would have those expenses. And they are a large percentage of, obviously, our operational costs, is for those activities in addition to teachers. And teachers cost more. No district across the state is getting enough money also for just to keep the teachers for all the benefits, right? And those things have gone up as well. So for us, the state's giving us $78,000. My teachers are costing in excess of over $92,000 without talking about benefits.
So when it comes to these numbers where you're getting them, do they come from the state legislature, or is it trickled to OSPI and through Superintendent Reichdahl's office, or where are those numbers set? And if it's been 4 years of deficiency, at what point do the districts, whether maybe they have band together, the superintendents, band together and march down to the Capitol and say, listen, this is not sustainable. Here's why. I mean, how, I guess if they're asking you to do more with less, and at some point, even less is still not working or helping. I mean, when do they see you and a group of people go, help us. We want to help you understand why this is costing us so much, or why we're having these deficiencies. And is it not necessarily rural, urban, but it is statewide kind of a thing?
Yeah, let me first start off with, for us, and well, it doesn't matter which district it really is across the state. We all have a shared interest in providing a great education for our youth, right? The students that go to the Shelton School District, we want a high quality education for them. We also have a shared frustration is when the funding doesn't match to fund those basic ed responsibilities. I think most people out there would love to know that we have a security personnel. I think a lot of people want to know, do you have after school tutoring available for the students? Is there going to be a counselor there or a nurse there when my student needs support? Yeah, I want that too. And then just as you said, it's really the funding comes from the state legislation. That's what they approved for the funding for K-12 public education. And then that OSPI takes those dollars and distributes those dollars out. We get our proportionment again. Levy makes up almost 10% of our money. So, depending again, I've went into depth about, I think in previous conversations about how the levy funds those things, but, when people get upset, right? The change, why aren't we having these things? Where did my monies go? Why are we in a deficit? Why can't you manage the money of where you're at? Well, the runaway costs are extreme. That's why dozens and dozens of districts, I don't want to say all districts, but dozens of districts, you can go on the news anywhere across the state, they are also can't keep up with the cost. And so when you have just a couple years, you can't just turn around and generate savings when you're automatically not generating the money from the state. The state monies don't keep up. And so we, just like everybody else, have to rely on savings coming off of COVID. And that people just don't keep that amount of money, because if you have too much money in the bank, people go, well, why didn't you spend it on the kids that you got? So there's this tenuous balance. I get it. And I'm also frustrated by the experiences that we have to do. But let's look past that, Jeff, and say, all right, fine. It's frustration. What are you going to do? Well, how do we get out of this situation? How are other districts getting out of this situation? And since I'm the superintendent of the Shelton School District and I'm super focused on the 4,400 kids we got to serve and making sure that the families feel like their child's needs are getting met, I'm working really hard to manage the monies that I got. And I've also talked to our state legislation. I got a couple more meetings coming up. They're in the middle of legislative session. I'm advocating for all those 4,400 kids that go to this district, because it's essential that we have the basic ed. I'm not asking for extra. I'm asking for, please just give me what it does to cost the basic education that we have, including the short $4 million over the last 3 years that I would please give me that money. That's all I'm asking for, is this is what my bill is for water and sewer. Give me that exact amount. I'm not asking for more. I'm just asking for that's where it's at. I can't manage out on something where the bill exceeds the revenue I get.
Are there other districts, and I think we've talked about this too, when it comes to districts that may be up, let's just say King County area, where they may have a little higher per capita income, like those types of schools. Is there a sliding scale that is looked at, or are all districts now across the board receiving the same percentage of funding? Like if you're in a district where the property taxes do help pay for a lot more of the things into the district, do they get a lesser amount from the state as it goes out annually?
So the simplest way I can explain it is that the state, through McCleary, the big lawsuit that came out around 2015, was around trying to take care of exactly the issue of some districts can generate a lot more money off their levy. Their levy cap is what it was called. They could generate quite a lot of money as a proportion of their funding for their district through their levy. That's been capped. And so the monies that do go to each district per pupil is generally the same for basic ed, the basic ed part. So that's the one part that I would say all listeners, yeah, it's the same generally across the state for basic ed. The other things are the categorical funds, which are some state and a lot of federal for like, what's your proportionment for how many kids qualify for special education, or what's your free and reduced poverty, your poverty level for your district. So like we qualify for a lot here in Shelton. So we get a lot of those, what they call supplemental dollars to provide those supplemental services to basic ed. So that's where some of the difference would happen between us and a Bainbridge Island, for example. But like I've talked about before, Bainbridge Island also is struggling. And so it's like these additional category dollars aren't the solution to anyone because they're not for basic ed services. And so for when we think about the levy, though, that's where it's still not the same because we cannot still generate that much money off of a levy compared to other districts with way higher property values, whether that's commercial or residential. So they can take a lot more. They can generate those dollars up to $2.50 per thousand of assessed value on a property. Districts like us, we're right at, we were $1.75 last year. We're at 205. And the thing I would have anybody listening is like, oh my God, that's an increase. No, the increase just because of the increases in the property value of what's going on here. So the lid is on how much money we can draw. So if we draw on $8 million, we're going to draw $8 million. It just means that percentage on any property is going to change only in reflection of the overall dollars that we're drawing. So it's not like I'm drawing extra money off other people if their property values are not going up. So that's really challenging because they can also, this is the really key thing. Some districts are moving to passing capital or technology levies. And that's where they get another levy. So they have multiple levies. We don't even introduce other levies. Like for the big thing is like, we need upgrade in technology. We need to spend millions of dollars. That's going to come out of our basic ed funds. And then other districts who have another levy for around technology, they can draw and build up those costs primarily through that levy. We don't. And so we just keep eroding for districts like Shelton compared to some other richer districts. We have to take that out of just what the state gives us, not what we get from local taxpayers. So super nervous about it, to be honest with you, Jeff, only because, not passing a levy, North Mason didn't pass their last just operational levy, which a lot of people go, oh, like, what do you need those dollars for? I'm like, well, let's start with athletics. Let's start with that. Just any activity bus, say any kind of security. That's directly where it comes from. Any additional nurses and counselors, that's where that also comes, because that's where we're capturing those dollars for to pay when they only give me like basically I think it's less than 3 nurses, when they go, oh, how do I make sure that I have at least a nurse tech or a certified nurse at each of our schools, because we have so many kids with needs.
When it comes to, quickly, I guess we'll just talk broadly, because who knows what's going to happen with the federal and the Department of Education. The new Secretary of Education was just confirmed, I think, last week or something like that. But they have talked about maybe completely transforming that, and even to withholding federal dollars to districts if they continue to engage in different things that don't align with the administration, kind of the DEI kind of stuff, this, that, and the other, inclusion. Is there any concerns about losing federal funding? How much funding does the Shelton School District get federally, I guess? And like what part of the pie is that money? And are you concerned about that as you look at kind of the directives moving forward, safe and secure schools and things like that?
Well, yeah, they have a new secretary, Linda McMahon. I don't know if I want to wrestle with this particular issue.
I see
overall.
What you did there.
That's okay.
For sure.
Big fan, WWF back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't, Jeff, I don't have a lot of purview. Like when I think about where I put my time and energy unbeknownst to most, is about the classroom. The everyday experience that kids have here is where I spend a lot of my time and energy of improving services. That's why our scores have gone up. That's why a decrease in suspensions. More kids are on track for graduation. We have more experiences for students, right? Those are the things that we've taken our time and energy since I've been here. The federal government and the cuts would be significant for us, again, because we are a higher needs district. Back to the question that you had is it the same for every district? It's not the same. And any cuts at the federal level would hurt those who have to have more supplemental supports, right? Back to free and reduced lunch and kids with special needs. And lunch and meals. I don't think a lot of people understand that the federal government, and actually it's the Department of Agriculture that actually really runs those meals, not so much but those clear through Department of Education, right? Is where that is for, your breakfast and lunch. That feeds a lot of kids here, right? We provide those services. Every kid's eligible for a free meal. And if that got cut, that'd be a big deal, because a lot of kids and families rely on that meal to be available to the kid. And we don't want hungry kids, Jeff.
And I remember too, I think pre-COVID, there were even like backpack programs where they would be able to take backpacks of food home, and that oftentimes was what the family survived on over the weekend.
That's right. And I was just emailing yesterday about a summer program for meals too, so that we'll be applying for that grant as well. I just hope it doesn't get cut.
Sure.
But that's a great opportunity for hundreds, Jeff, of kids to have a meal. And if you grew up where I grew up, it was powdered milk, it was governmental cheese. It was just my mom and I. I know what it's like to have to be hungry. And I just think I have a lot of, advocacy, just make sure that our kids are not showing up every day hungry.
Right.
Let's get them fed. I think that's a paramount duty. But again, what people forget is that, you can derail government, but in this case, school districts are a central piece to providing some really basic services, and meals are one of them to countless of youth and families.
So moving on now to some of the questions that I see out there on the ether, and you don't necessarily have the opportunity to engage in these conversations during school board meetings because people have just a few minutes to kind of just talk at you instead of with you. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I have read, and maybe you have an update on this, is something about the bathroom doors at OBJH. Have you heard this?
Yes, I have.
What can you talk to me about that?
There's a lot here. I'll make it quick on this one. So OBJH is a old building and needs to be, we've talked about it. Robert's done presentations, for example, like my guy, head of maintenance, that building needs a refresh. Like when buildings get that old, they need a refresh. Mm-hmm. There's not the money for it at all. And we're not coming up on a bond. So those aren't passing in any district across the state. So for us, we have to deal with old stalls. And when students damage those stalls or lean on them, it's the du jour. It's the, as things are, Jeff, some things are popular. Mm-hmm. It's popular to help bang into or hang on stalls. It's been like that since COVID, and that's unfortunate. We've replaced the ones at SHS in a lot of places, so we kind of industrialize it, right, Jeff? And so in the meantime, those parts are old. So again, old building, old parts, harder to always secure, not always so easy. We've fixed a majority of them and they're in good shape. So there are stalls available for girls and boys there that are operational. I'm not here to say that there wasn't stalls that were damaged or having access, but they are. And then we're looking at trying to, again, the limited resources I have, which please don't throw rocks through windows, which is another issue that happened there. That's almost $100,000 of damage, Jeff. Do people understand $100,000 worth of damage?
Right. That's a lot of money.
By one individual?
Yeah.
That's huge. Bathroom stalls is going to be cheap compared to that. But I'm just trying to industrialize. So we're going to retrofit some of the bathrooms. Like, again, I've already done this at SHS. And so that it does really work. It's kind of like when you go to the airport. Like, yeah, you couldn't damage one of those stalls, but some of those old rickety ones are just really easy.
Yeah.
And so we did fix them. They're up and running. And I appreciate the concern because kids need privacy when they're going to the bathroom.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the bullying issues that happen across the district and where and I don't know if it's like a matrix that is looked at to determine. I've had to deal with this with my son in a different district, but still we've talked to the principal about how it works and kind of the understanding of what bullying is versus, girls picking on boys or whatever, this and that type of thing. So how does a teacher assess that, I don't want to say the threat level, but like the bullying level, and how does that work through the system?
First, we want every student to feel safe and welcome at our school, right? It's one of our 4 priority areas for the district. We've put a lot of time and energy into making sure that when kids walk through the door, they can feel like they can be respected and safe, and so that they focus on learning, right? And so, unfortunately, in this time and age, Jeff, as much as I can lock down all the environments and try to provide an engaging instruction, a lot of things carry through in the community back into the school, right? Again, schools are the center of communities. And so some of the issues, whether they're online, which is where a lot of issues stem from, there's still the other issues that, things didn't get along, whether that's out in the neighborhood or even on the buses or stuff like that, right? That something happened in an activity or athletic event, even in the community as well. So when things happen, whether that's a carry-in issue or something that arises inside the school where kids are just, play fighting or just not getting along, not able to really understand, like their social skills might be needing some extra support. Then that is really on the school administrator. We've done extensive training here in the district. Since I've been here, we've had a handful of trainings specific to reading situations for discipline and specifically on whether that is that friendship's gone wrong? Is that something where, again, someone needs to work on their pro-social skills? Or is that something where one kid is dealing with some real trauma and they are projecting that onto others? Or is it bullying? And bullying, really the easiest way to understand that is it's really about a consistent targeting of another student that really there's very low to no relationship with. And so they're just there to try to make your life more miserable, is really about how we define bullying. And so our numbers are really low around bullying. I've given that information out. It does happen, so I'm not here to say it doesn't. Most situations, and again, as a longtime educator for 25 years, I can say a lot of the situations are around kids just lacking the social skills about how to handle a situation, where that's a friendship. And I say, like, is that a tight friendship, a loose friendship, or really just acquaintances kind of friendship? And then helping them navigate those situations, the student and the other student, and anybody else involved. It's usually not even just 2 students. It's usually a circle of situations. And so we want to get right on it. And then we have a number of strategies to help with it. So I'm very sympathetic to that. We work, like I said, super hard on it. Am I going to prevent it at all times? Like we cannot. We don't have the supervision to be in every single environment. Kids have to try on their skills. But I would say this, Jeff, they are great learning opportunities, because when kids go back out into adulthood, we want to give them the skills of when there are disagreements, when you might not have the same point of view, or that the people are just using a lot of stress and anxiety. How do you manage it yourself so that, again, you're not projecting that and putting that onto others?
You mentioned the bus, the transportation district, the co-op. That is a separate. Is that a separate thing from the Shelton School District? And I see online sometimes people will say, "Oh, the bus was canceled again this week," or "I wish I had a little more heads up on that." Is that within the district, or is that it's a co-op, so is that a broader base?
Yeah, it's a co-op. So we run that in combination with Southside and Pioneer. They have their individual contracted bus drivers. So that's how that runs, and their own buses. But the overall operations is run by the district. So the central hub of it is a Shelton district, but the buses and bus drivers are individually. I get a lot of emails from Southside and Pioneer issues that come to me, and I'm like, that's not, I sometimes have to go, is the parent trying to, they mislabeled the district? And is that an issue for us or them? So that we work on those things and address them.
So if there are issues that happen on a bus, do parents contact the district or do they contact the co-op?
Really, the best way to do it if they have an issue on there is to call their school administrator, whoever that is, because that's how districts are best, because they're going to be the ones that has a relationship with the kid and the family. Let's get right on it. They're the ones that can provide discipline. They'll do the investigation thoroughly. Yes, the bus driver will present a report, but you're talking about the difference between a bus driver and a certificated administrator. That's just a big difference. And so calling your administrator, because if you want to get action done, that's the best way. Email, call, those are the things. Honestly, it's been quite low, Jeff. I mean, I know issues happen, but again, I mean, you're raising an issue. It's not elevated now, whether there's something happens out in social media, I'm not always present to.
Sure.
But I would say, since I've been here, I receive a lot less complaints around just student behavior, and our data definitely shows that when you're talking a 70% decrease in suspension rates, doesn't mean we don't have kids still acting out. Doesn't mean we don't still suspend. I still deal with those issues. We don't want fighting on campuses. We don't want drugs. We most certainly don't want any weapons, right? And so those are things that just aren't tolerated here. We'll work with the kids and educate them. That's our job. But we also want to provide safety for the rest of the kids that are coming to us.
Well, the next month or the next month after that, when we sit down again, it'll probably be closer to a better understanding of how next school year will look. So we'll kind of talk about that and the decisions you make there when it comes to that. And maybe we'll have some additional insight from the ledge, as they'll have probably wrapped up by then as well. So maybe they'll have some answers too. I
would enjoy talking more about the budget. And I would also, if we can, talk about summer program. We have a robust summer program and love to always recruit more students to attend.
For sure. Shelton School District Superintendent Wyeth Jessee, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff.